We have the Director of Financial Services in the company of the Vice Chancellor. Also, we have the Registrar, Landmark University, joining us in this program this morning. Please, may we be seated. The Vice Chancellor, sir, it's my privilege to invite the Director, Center for Learning Resources, for the introduction of the training program. Let's put our hands together to invite the Director, Center for Learning Resources, Dr. Jerome Idegbayon, sir. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. The Vice Chancellor, Landmark University, the Registrar, Landmark University, the Director, Financial Services of Landmark University, all other faculty and staff present here this afternoon. Let me introduce the visitors that are here this afternoon. We have Mr. Mohammed Uman. You are welcome, sir. He's Elsevier's Sub-Sahara Africa Manager, Research Solution. Then we have the second person here, Khalid Salim, Customer Consultant, Africa. We have Mr. Ibrahim Usman, the representative in Nigeria. We want to thank God this morning for this program. It's not a time to be talking too much. It's a training program for our Science Direct. And we are all aware that the university subscribes to Science Direct, and we pay millions of naira every year. And the essence of this training is to open our eyes to best practices, the benefits, how we can actually utilize this Science Direct, how we can make maximum use of this database that we subscribe to for our research and for what the university is driving. And world-class university, they are actually using this Science Direct rating for institution. So that is why we are here this afternoon. And Mr. Umar and Mr. Khalid, they are all here this afternoon for the training. I want to know that let us take every benefit so that we'll make use of it, and at the end, it will speak well for Landmark University, and it will speak well for every one of us as an individual. Thank you, and God bless you. This time, before the next assignment, I want to invite the Registrar of Landmark University for the next assignment.
Thank you, the Director, Center for Learning Resources, the Vice Chancellor, Landmark University, the Director, Financial Services, the team from Elsevier, faculty and staff of Landmark University. Learning is a continuous process. We learn and learn and learn again. We learn, we unlearn, and we relearn. The moment we stop to learn, that moment we stop to be relevant in our society. And that is why we are here today. We are here today to increase learning. I got information that this same team was here about 2 sessions ago, and I know that there was also a team led by Professor Molly of Covenant University that was here also about 2 sessions ago to train us in this direction. However, this morning, we have this team, again from Elsevier, in our midst to teach us new things, things that will assist our publication drive and our research drive. And I'm sure that what they have come with will indeed be value-adding. At the short meeting we just had with them in the Vice Chancellor's office, they assured us of continuous collaboration because they have seen Landmark University as a very fertile ground for publication and research. And so this afternoon, this morning, without saying much, I will do the next assignment and also admonish that we settle down to tease everything that we can from this training session and workshop. And we can be assured that we'll all be the better for it. At this juncture, permit me, as we all rise, to welcome the Vice Chancellor, Landmark University, Professor Adeniyi Olayinjo. I'm sure we can do that with an ovation. Thank you.
Thank you, the Registrar. You may please be seated. Let me, on behalf of the management, first of all, apologize to all of you for keeping you since 10 o'clock thereabout. We all know our road from Ilorin to this place. It's not intentional. Having said that, the Registrar Landmark University, the Director of Financial Services, the DCLR, members of the university management, our guests from Elsevier Science Direct, we will welcome you to our amazing campus. This training is on Elsevier Science Direct, and when I was reading it, I said, okay, Elsevier Science Direct, Engineering Direct, Agric Direct, and of course, Business Direct. The common factor there is still science. Engineering is science. Science is science. Agric is science, and business is science. So it is still Elsevier Science Direct and MENDELEY user training. The vision of Landmark University, as we all know, and of course to some of our guests, is to be a leading world-class university. And that we want to do by catching a niche for ourselves, and that is by spearheading an agrarian revolution. And so, for us to do this, we need to build our capacity. And we all know that it's not a wishful thinking to be a leading world-class status, to be a leading world-class university. It's a tall order to be a world-class university, but much more when you want to be a leading world-class university. And so what does it take? Fortunately, embedded in the core values of this university is capacity building. And that is exactly what we are doing now. And what we have been doing, going through down the memory lane, we have a long-standing partnership with Elsevier. And like the DCLR just mentioned, on a yearly basis, we know how much we pay just to be able to have access to all, not some, of Elsevier journals. Having said that, I'm able to say, sirs, that after your visit 2 sessions ago, and then God Servant came around and also charged us. We used to drag with our publications. As a matter of fact, it was around 75. Yes, in 2017, it was 75 publications that are Scopus indexed, all of them in Elsevier journals. But thereafter, we had a giant leap. And by 2018, after your visit, after the visit of the group from the Covenant University, and of course after the charge of the Chancellor, we went to 228, 226, from 75 to 226. And as we speak to you, 2019 is still counting. As of today, we have 367. Can we give it to Jesus? 367 publications. This year alone, we have done more than 20. And so the target this year is 1,000. The church just has an operation because we are a faith-based university. And whatever it says to one, it says to all. The church is having an operation called Operation 10 for Christ 2020. And by the leading and inspiration of the Holy Ghost, we are also saying 10 for Landmark 2020. By God's grace, next week, we are going to be inaugurating that operations so as to also drive this that we are looking at. So, but the one that is very relevant to this training now is what is called Operation Published by All Means. And that is version in line with our Operation Subscription by All Means. These are not, because if you don't know where you are going, every other place will look like it. We have a focus. We are going to hit 1,000. And how do we go about that, if not for this kind of training? So this training is very apt, it's timely, and I want to employ us to make use of this time wisely. Whatever, because this training is supposed to be for like a week, and you're going to be having it for like 2 hours. You can see that it's very demanding. So you don't have time to waste. Be focused and get the best out of this place so that the university will benefit from it, and you as an individual will benefit from it. So once again, on behalf of God's servant, we declare this training open in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Finally, let me quickly say this. The Sustainable Development Goals is here direct. Looking around this room, all the 17 SDG are already embedded in this room. And so people you are going to be training now, immediately after now, they are going to go into different groups. The first one there is SDG 1, which is poverty eradication and not advocacy. And of course, looking at that, you have sustainable cities. You have reduced inequalities and social welfare. All the SDG cut across all our 4 colleges. And so here in this university, we are living it. We are not just saying it, we are living it. Individuals are going to key into this group. And I want to believe that after this training, it will be easier for us to put people in different groups. Having said this, you are welcome to our amazing campus, and to our faculty and staff, I wish you all the best. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much. Please, let's be seated. So we'll be going to the training proper, and I'm sure that our facilitators are prepared. Shalan, you'll be coming up for the presentation. Let's put our hands together as it comes for the presentation. You're welcome. The Vice Chancellor, the Registrar, and the Director of Financial Services are leaving the auditorium now. We appreciate your presence, sir. Thank you very much. You're welcome, ma'am.
in another room. So even if I use your own computer, I cannot be in the room. Because this internet cannot hold the submission. And you can say
What is the password? Landmark? Capital?
الشاحن انا سبته هنا طلعته سبته.
You're connected now.
Okay, connected. Okay.
Do I have any
To connect.
I have a converter. Yes.
خالد قول لي محتاج اساعدك في ايه؟
لا مش حاجة.
جربت تشتغل؟ لا بالعكس انا بشجع.
So I'm connected.
عشان الجاي اللي هم شايفيننا بنظبط.
Give me your card. Give one. Give me your card. Bring two.
Can we just
Yes, I'm setting it up right. Anybody at the other? I'll send you the meeting ID. Okay. I was just checking how I sent you the meeting ID. مصاريف الزوم دي جت
برافو عليك.
خلاص كده اسمه
صورة بديهة أنا إن شاء الله. هم عايزين هنا الميتنج اي دي بس.
الميتنج ID بس.
بس هتبقى 45 دقيقة ولا أكتر؟ هو بيبقى على الهوست ولا على
بص انا قعدت
عليك أنت؟ يعني مش هم، يعني هم مش
انا لو عايز اقعد ساعتين ممكن اعمله لغايه الساعه 2 يعني.
بعت لنا اللينك.
بس انا هديهم.
مش فاهم. قول.
Okay, it's 3.
Can we
It's 999 06 3129. عمر حاجة ايبك بس انا ما اتحطتش. اوكي
قشطة. حلو. مش فاهمين. اهو.
يس.
الله عليك. اتحرك كده خلي بس. ماشي. انبسطت منك.
Scopus, I can move to the end. Okay. Leave the start.
Yes.
No, but okay. Having a mouse won't be nice.
Let me give you this wireless and mount.
انت معاك البوينتر؟
مش معنى هعمل على نص كده. Hello? Good morning, everyone. Everybody can hear me, right? Okay, perfect. So please accept my apologies first for the delay in the onset of this training. Sadly, we had an air flight delay, and we needed some time to set up the presentation. So my apologies again. First of all, my name is Khaled Chalan. I'm the customer consultant for Elsevier, working on North Africa and Sub-Saharan region. It's such a pleasure to be here today with you. It is actually my role and my mandate to be supporting the academic community, especially, and we have special focus, and we value immensely our partnership with Landmark University. So as part of this partnership, me being here to provide all the support that I can give to you and to help you utilize the resources that you currently have access to the fullest, to have more impact and more significance to the research to the very valuable research you're already doing. And throughout the presentation, I will start with a little bit of an introduction on what's the current status for the research in Nigeria in general and in Landmark University in specific. Okay, so once again, thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being here. And And thank you once again for your time, and I hope by the end of our training today we'll be able to cover some points with us. I'd like to start the training today with one of my favorite Bible verses actually. It's from Psalm 111:2. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. And this is what academic people are doing. We're studying the works of the Lord. We're using this science, we're using this knowledge to actually help and benefit the entirety of mankind. And our role here as providers of electronic resources, of the content itself, is to empower and enable the researchers who work with such mission. So without further ado, this is a little bit of the agenda of what we'll be covering today. And I'll start with a little bit of an introduction of what Elsevier does, and that will help us determine how we can better support you along the way. So in general, when people think of Elsevier, what's the first word that comes into mind? How would you describe Elsevier? Anybody wants to suggest a word that bears into your mind when you say Elsevier? Any thoughts? In general, when people think of Elsevier, they think of Elsevier as a publisher. Okay? And that's usually the first word that comes into mind, either publisher or journals. And let me tell you one thing, we really, not just a publisher, we are the biggest publisher working in STM, Science, Technology, and Medicine. So we publish around 18% of all the scientific literature being produced annually. And the idea is we're not just proud about the quantity, we are more proud about two things. About the impact that the research we publish, but we are even more proud about building long bridges and supporting the researcher communities that we work with. So in general, Elsevier describes itself now as a global information analytics business that specializes in science and health. And what does that mean? It means that we are combining our capabilities as a publisher with our growing capabilities as becoming technology provider to develop new solutions that will help researchers on every step along the way. So it's the technology and the content working together to support you, to help you solve your challenges for the benefit of humanity. And what we do is we help and we reach out to the academic institutions who fulfill that vision. So a little bit of where we stand on publishing. These are the publishing data we are working on. So around 25% of some of the topics. In total of all the content, it's 18%. In some fields, it's 35%, like in earth sciences, for example. So in general, when we think of what goes on in academia, we want to establish the full picture. A traditional publisher would be working in this area, in this gray area here. They usually handle new submissions received by the editor. The editor is usually an academic. Sometimes they are a professional editor, but he's usually somebody with technical expertise that would determine the validity of research and its suitability to the journal they are working for. And if they see that this is a promising submission, they will put it under peer review. And peer review has been the main mechanism for producing academic knowledge for the last almost 400 years. Peer reviewers work with the author to give them feedback and determine the suitability or the validity for research for actual publishing. Their feedback comes usually in 4 terms that many of you by now are aware of. It comes with acceptance, which almost never happens from the first time. It comes with acceptance with minor modifications, acceptance with major modifications, or rejection, which sometimes happen to be with the possibility of resubmission. So in general, I submit a paper, I get, for example, accepted with major modifications, I work on the modifications, it's being refereed again by the peer reviewers. Peer reviewers are technical experts on the matter, people who are doing research on the same subject, but I don't know them as author, their names remain blinded. Some journals work with double blind where the reviewers don't even know the name of the researcher. Anyway, it goes backward and forward. I do the modifications. I send them again to the reviewers till the publication is cleared. It's accepted for publications, and we have what's called the accepted manuscript. A publisher works on that accepted manuscript to make it more viable and more appealing to readers, to support the quality of the content that's being published, to deliver it to the researcher community available worldwide. They're responsible for the distribution and dissemination of that. So usually a publisher works in this gray area. But we found that there are many challenges that researchers face outside that gray area. For example, so what is the starting point for any research? Usually, any research starts with the point of what topic I'm going to be working on. Okay? And for academic researchers, we should have the academic freedom to pursue whatever topic that we want to pursue. Especially if you're a tenured professor, then you should have that kind of freedom. But there are many, okay. So that being said, but there are many success factors that determine how your opportunities in becoming more successful researcher. Some of these factors could be related to your ability to attract fund, and some are related to how appealing your research would be for journals to accept to publish in their journals themselves. And let me draw a very, very crude example, okay? So if today, in 2020, I'm working on a research that is covering a topic like coal-powered trains, okay? So if in 2020 I work on coal-powered trains, nobody is really interested in putting their money on coal power in trains in 2020. This might have been a very exciting topic if I was working in the 20s, in like 1920s, for example. And that's a very, very crude example. All of you know that coal powered trains are an obsolete technology, but it can be very tricky and very fast-paced moving topics. So for example, if I'm working on cancer research and I'm reading a paper that was published 5 years ago, I'm probably reading history more than I'm reading something I could build on, okay? Because the topics can be very fast moving. And sometimes some topics take very strong, what can be described as a paradigm shift. So another example that I'll draw that's a bit closer to engineering. How many of you here have heard of fuel cells? So fuel cells is one technology that harnesses some sort of chemical energy to power. Usually people have been experimenting with using it, especially for automotives, okay? People have been working on fuel cells for maybe the last 30 years. And you can see that every 5 or 6 years, they work on some technology, some specific technology, and then they found out that this is probably a dead end, so they start working on a very alternative route. If I am not able to follow up with what's going on, I could be continuing my research in a dead end and I wouldn't be able to tell. Because this happens. For example, if any of you is a bit into chemical engineering, for example, alkaline fuel cells are no longer the primary investigated fuel cells now. They used to be very popular back like maybe 15 to 20 years ago, for example, okay? They change. It changes all across the time. You need to be up to date forever, and you need to be able to see what's trending and valid throughout all the literature and all the entire academic community. Another question and challenge that researchers face along the way is attracting fund. This again depends on how appealing your topic is as well. The preparation, the collection of data, managing data, working in teams, nobody works in solo anymore. This is very rare to have a single author paper, especially in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, for example. In medicine, it's almost very, very rare, almost non-existent. People work in teams, and the more diversified your team is, usually the better outcome you have. And we found out that in papers with international collaboration tend to usually perform much better than papers with only national collaboration, and they perform even better than the papers that are within collaboration within the same institution only. So the more outreach you have, and that outreach requires coordination and collaboration. How do you identify collaborators? How do you reach out and organize the work that you do with them? Once that we've gone through with the research comes point 5, that's writing up research. And let's just review one point. Why do academic researchers have to publish? You've probably heard the expression publish or perish, and it's very famous slogan in academia. You always have to be publishing. And why is it so? This comes from the same principle and the mandate that academic people were charged with. In academia, we are required to generate knowledge and disseminate that knowledge. That's part of our mandate. If we are not disseminating knowledge, and dissemination of knowledge, if it's very new idea, that usually happens through scholarly communication in peer-reviewed publishing. If it's well-established ideas, it also occurs in teaching mainly, teaching undergrads, teaching postgraduates, and as well as writing books. So in general, this is part of why we have to always be publishing, because our productivity is generating knowledge, and our mandate is to spread and disseminate that knowledge. This is where the entire concept comes from. So once a research is being published, it goes out to the entire academic community to receive. And let me discuss another point that we have is how do we evaluate a research once it's published? How do we evaluate research papers? Once you've started doing research, even if you're still a postgraduate student doing your master's thesis or your PhD thesis, usually nobody gives grades for research. It's not an exam, okay? But what we can actually measure, capture, and capitalize is the impact created by this research, okay? How many people have used this research, have built their efforts upon it by taking that research as a reference for their other research. So tracking citations is one of the mandates that's carried by large databases to be able to tell the performance and to tell the impact created by those research papers. So in general, as I told you earlier, a publisher should work in the gray area here or the shaded area here. Elsevier actually works on every step along the way. We're developing more and more technologies to help you. Science Direct is what is entirely what Elsevier publishes. Everything Elsevier does as a publisher ends up on Science Direct, and Science Direct is now one of over 60 solutions being offered by Elsevier. Some of these solutions you might not be aware that you already have access to, because these are open solutions that are available for all researchers, and I'll be discussing some of those solutions that we do have. But the whole idea of Elsevier being just a publisher was completely superseded. We even have solutions to help universities become their own publishers at times. So in general, in the mid of all the different tasks that an academic researcher will be going through, finding ideas, staying up to date, finding collaborators, writing grants, teaching, administrative roles, you need to manage your time more efficiently. You need to cut out time to be able to manage your own research and not get completely into all the other tasks that you have to do. And to be able to do that, we are trying to help eliminate the time losses that occurs to researchers in tedious tasks. As long as we can provide a technology that will save you time, we are working on that technology, and we probably are offering it now. So that's a little bit of different solutions and how they fit into the researcher workflow. I'll be only focusing on the solutions you have access to now, as of current, and you have access to Science Direct. Science Direct, usually people think of Science Direct as a repository or a place where I can go get the PDF for the high quality and most relevant and very impactful research that's being published by Elsevier. So Science Direct has access to around, this is where 18% of all the world's literature exists, and you have access to almost all of that content. of the journal's content specifically. But the thing is, Science Direct is not just a place to get the PDF, it's a solution, a complete solution with technologies that are there to help you save time and to help you do the literature discovery more efficiently and do the literature reviews you're working on more efficiently. I'll be capitulating on the search capabilities on Science Direct, as well as all the functions that we've built into the electronic web page format for the paper before you download the PDF. We've been developing more and more technologies before you click the download PDF to help save you time. So you can always access the PDF to keep an archived version of the article on your computer, but working with the article online can be very beneficial to you as well. So that's with Science Direct. So you can use Science Direct actually to do some of the discovery, and you can also manage all the content that you've downloaded on Mendeley. So Mendeley is two-part solutions. One part solution of it is managing your references, and the other part of that solution is it's an academic social network, a place to manage your collaborations, to showcase your work, to find funding, to find careers. So it's a complete solution that's an academic environment on its own right. And let me ask you a question here before we start. How many people of you here already use Mendeley or any other reference manager? Okay, so that's not the majority of the people here, and let me tell you that's very common and something we see very often. But let me ask you a few questions, okay? So you all know that if I use somebody's ideas in my research, I always have to cite that person, and I cannot use their own words verbatim, except in very extreme cases, okay? I have to write another person's ideas with my own words, but that doesn't make the idea mine. I still have to give them proper credit by citing who came up with that idea originally. And to do so, usually when you're writing a paper, the number of references, of course, differs by field, but we're talking somewhere in the region of maybe 30 to 100 or even more references per journal paper. For example, if you're doing a thesis, usually you can go a bit higher, but usually these are very familiar ranges for the references you manage. So, and a reference can be cited in multiple times in the document. You will need to prepare that. Resorting to citing references manually, while it seems like something you're familiar with, so I need to cite that article, okay, that's gonna be number 13, I'll open a bracket, write 13, close that bracket, and then at the end of the references list, I'll be just typing the reference, or I'll be copying it from the referencing data from wherever I downloaded that paper, for example. But the idea is why we need reference managers. So, for example, again. So, one of the ideas of why we need those reference managers is that, let's say I'm a graduate student. I just wrote my PhD thesis and I submitted to my professor. This is the first draft, so I'm getting my first feedback, and I got very minor feedback. Okay, I like your thesis, but there is that section 3.2, it probably should be moved to be 4.3. Move to another chapter, it will make for a better flow of ideas. That's very common, actually. And if that's the only feedback you get, then you're doing a great job anyway, but usually you get a lot of feedback from your advisor. Anyway, that little modification would require reordering the entire references in your entire thesis as well as their citations below. So while moving that section from here to there is a cut and paste job, reordering the references is a very hectic job that would take days to do. Let's examine another scenario. If I'm writing a paper and that paper happens to be submitted to a journal, and for some reason I got the very most common reason for rejections usually is that paper is out of scope. Okay? That's globally the most common reason for rejections. Anyway, so if you get that kind of rejection, then you probably did not choose the best fitting journal to to your research, or you haven't been able to showcase how your research is very relevant to that journal. Okay, these are two reasons that probably cause that very common cause for rejection. And when that happens, usually you will submit your article elsewhere. While there is actually a new tendency that's being adopted by major publishers like Elsevier, where you do not really have to format the paper in the format for the publishing unless that paper was accepted. So you can submit an unformatted manuscript, but you still have to abide to the referencing style being employed by that journal. And so the bare minimum that you will need to do when you're resubmitting a paper is to reorganize that referencing in the other referencing style. So let's say I'm using the Nature style for referencing, and I'm resubmitting my paper to another journal that uses the Vancouver style for referencing. That would mean that I would have to change the way the brackets or the in-text citation is written if it's numbered. Of course, this can happen with other fields that use author name and year, like MLA or Harvard or Chicago or APA. Like, you know, there are some referencing where you write the name of the author, the last name, comma, the year of publication. Okay. So anyway, if you are changing, you'll have to change the in-text citation as well as the entire reference list. Then again, if you're doing it, typing in manually, that takes days. We believe that those should not be days. This should be done in minutes or less. Okay. And those 3 days that you would have wasted doing a very tedious job that does not really require your intellect as an academic, if we save you those 3 days to do more work in your laboratory or to manage your graduate students more closely, okay, that would be better for science than to waste those days just working on Microsoft Word or whatever word processor you're working with. Okay, so that's part of what Mendeley can offer to you. And Mendeley is free for researchers to use, and it's at your behest, and we'll be discussing today how it can be used usefully to you. Also, so Mendeley is part the reference manager, the other part is the interface for collaborations, for funding, for managing data sets, for collaborations, and so forth. So once I've prepared my manuscript and it's ready for submission, there is one new trend that's growing in the academic community called the preprint servers. Okay? So preprint servers are places where you can upload and showcase your research paper before you submit it to a journal. Okay? And one of the main advantages you get out of this, other than the showcasing, is you can actually get feedback from other researchers to work on that, what we call a working paper, because that's a paper still in progress, it has not been submitted, to develop a better version before you go into peer review, before you submit into a journal. You probably, because we see a very growing tendency in the research done in the university here, we know that many, if not all of the people here have already gone through peer review process themselves. In any way, sometimes peer review process can take too long. Sometimes academic editors are under a lot of pressure managing a huge number of submissions that they won't look into your paper to give you a first decision for months. And this happens, and it's always better to have a better version of your paper before you go and submit that. And you're not losing anything, because even if that work is not published in a peer-reviewed journal, the working paper cannot be plagiarized because it bears your name. And everybody can see that the one who did this research was you, because that research is still discoverable. We have another free solution for academics, for researchers. It's called SSRN. It was originally developed for social science people, because social science people, they have peer review process that can go for a year or more. Okay, and that's very common. You hear numbers in social sciences of, I submitted a paper 2.5 years ago and I just got my acceptance. Okay, it happens in social science. Of course, the behaviors and the trends differ by field. So this was originally developed for social researchers, but that's not the case anymore. So SSRN grew to include hard sciences, includes to physics, chemistry, engineering, and so forth. It's organized where you join a research network by your topic. When you upload your paper, it becomes visible to the people within that research network. These are all people combined by the same field. So for example, if I'm working on something that relates to agrarian economy, for example, so all the researchers, I join the research network for that field, and it becomes visible to others as well. So that helps a little bit with improving the quality for the submitted research paper before you actually submit it, okay? And remember that people can still cite your preprint paper. Of course, it's considered as non-peer-reviewed literature because it hasn't gone through peer review yet, but we find that in a lot of fields, people start to cite actually preprint papers, okay? So it's always handled with caution if you're citing preprint, not peer reviewed, but it is growing with more acceptance. So once we've reached that point in any way, whether I've gone through the preprint process or not, it's time to submit that paper. And there comes very important questions that you need to ask. So the first important question, okay, so I've written that paper, where am I going to publish it? Okay. So in general, if you're choosing one of Elsevier's, if you're choosing a journal that's within Elsevier, we have another free solution that can help you suggest, or it can suggest for you journals to publish in from within Elsevier. So we have a solution called the Journal Finder, journalfinder.elsevier.com. I'll show it to you during the demonstration today. So Journal Finder employs artificial intelligence. You put in your paper title, the abstract, the keywords, and it will start to, using artificial intelligence, it will start to understand the text that you've entered, and based on this, it will start recommending which Elsevier journals are most suitable for what you've entered. This remains only an advising tool. You always need to read the journal's aim and scope very, very carefully. You have to understand the mindset for that journal because you are always the best judge to whether or not that journal fits your research itself. So that's one solution. So Journal Finder will actually suggest Elsevier journals for you to publish in. It will give you some information about the journal. For example, the average time that you need, the average time that this journal usually responds by the first decision. So if the editor will allow you to enter peer review or give you a desk rejection, for example.
He should be talking while demonstrating what he's suggesting.
Okay.
Like the Journal Finder.
Yes. I'll get to it. But right now I'm focusing more on the flow. Just that. Okay. So anyway, however, an academic should always retain the freedom to publish in any journal that they see most fitting for their research, whether it's an Elsevier journal or it's another publisher's journal. But it's really important because there are two models currently available for publishing when you're publishing a paper. One model is called the subscription model. The subscription model has been this main model for publishing that ever since the invention of academic journals in 1674. And it's been working for almost the last 400 years. This is where an author submits their article to a journal. It goes through the editor, the peer review. After it's accepted, it's published. Back in the day, it's print. Now, everything is almost electronically published now. And the cost for the publishing process is incurred on the reader side. So if it was print, you will need to buy that journal or to have a subscription to it. Now everything is electronic, you usually have a subscription. And currently, Landmark University provides you access to almost all of Elsevier journals, okay? And in this model, the author does not pay to get published, okay? So, because it's already part of the subscriptions, the publisher covers their money from the reader side anyway, so the author will not have to pay any charge. The newer model, championed currently by Europeans mostly, is called the gold open access model. The gold open access model is that I'm a researcher, I want to retain the copyright for my paper because I don't want anybody to put it into under a subscription condition. It will be made publicly available for free for everyone, and in that case, the author or their institution or their funder will incur the cost for publishing, and an APC, an article processing charge, would be paid to the publisher, and that article is made publicly available for free. So this is where an author would have to pay money to the publisher. And let me ask you one question. You usually in most of the local journals employ the gold open access, so you might have encountered a lot of gold open access journals. But currently, as we're speaking, 70% of all the research being published worldwide comes from the subscription model. So it's more often that researchers still choose the old model where they don't pay article processing charges than the gold open access model, although the gold open access model is growing more and more trending as well. As Elsevier, we do understand that different researchers in different communities have different priorities. So the Europeans are championing the gold open access. We're trying to increase our portfolio of fully gold open. These are journals that only accept the gold open access model, but the majority of our journals work under hybrid model. They are subscription journals that offer you the option, if you deem it a priority of yours, to have that article published as gold open access model. There is actually a third option available called the green open access. So green open access is essentially a subscription model, so the author doesn't pay. However, you retain the right to share freely and publicly, legally, your research as the accepted manuscript after an embargo period. That embargo period is usually 12 months in most journals. In some cases, it's shorter. In some other cases, it's longer, but this is the more common figure that you'll hear. After 12 months, you can self-publish the accepted manuscript. The preprint version before peer review is always yours. So the copy that you have uploaded on a preprint server before, or before the peer review itself, it's always yours for you freely to share. The accepted manuscript after the peer review can be only shared after the green open access embargo period. So these are a little bit, some journals of Elsevier employ what we call an open archive or delayed open access option, is that a journal accepts a subscription model paper, but after a certain period of time, usually longer than the green open access period, the Science Direct itself will make that article publicly available for free for everyone. These are some journals of Elsevier that employ what we call open archive or delayed open access option. But what's really, really pressing and important, and I'd like you to pay very special care to, some journals claim falsely that they are fully gold open access journals, when in reality they are not even journals to start with. They don't have peer review, they don't have proper process, they don't have qualified people to work as editors or as peer reviewers. These journals will send you an email telling you, we are the journal of so and so, and they use very flashy names, and they will tell you we are a journal working on any topic. They will select a topic, or sometimes they're very broad, but anyway, they will tell you, you submit your paper, you pay $100, $200, you will get your paper published in 2 days. I've even seen journals saying that your article will be published on the same day. Okay? And it takes you even longer to grade an exam paper when you have the model answer for it. Okay? There is no real peer review, and there is no extent. They will go to very far extents to get your money. There are people who have documented their attempts to see how far those predatory journals will go. So somebody actually tried to write a paper, and in the middle they just wrote gibberish, any letters on the keyboard. And when that happened, people would just found out that this paper was accepted without any modifications, and it actually got published. Someone else actually tried to write a paper on a cardiology paper, like heart medicine, for Tom and Jerry cartoon. Okay, it got published. Okay, a third one wrote a paper including, and pardon me, profanity, like really bad words inside the paper, and it was published. Okay, and the real harm being done here is not just the money they are slipping off from people under false pretenses. It's actually they can trick you. If you think that this journal is a credible journal and you submit your paper to a journal that publishes papers on the health of Tom and Jerry, okay, you're actually making your research look bad. And whenever another researcher finds your work valuable and they want to cite it, whenever they add a paper from a predatory journal as reference, they get feedback from the editor. You are citing research that cannot be trusted, that comes from predatory journals. We're very sorry, we cannot trust your research even. So it's a second degree of harm that they cause as well. So please be very wary of predatory journals. One of the very clear telltales is it's very, very, very rare for a journal to solicit, to ask for submissions. Okay? If they are sending you email asking for submissions, you have to be very suspicious. Okay? What we're going through and what we're working on is we have a platform called Scopus that's not currently accessible, but there are some free and public features on Scopus that you can use to help you with that. So it will offer you some basic support to it. So Scopus is the world's largest academic database for research, for peer-reviewed research. And Scopus covers journals coming from more than 5,000 publishers. So Elsevier is just one of 5,000 publishers being available on Scopus. Scopus only accepts or indexes research coming from journals that has been scrutinized, like have been examined properly for the quality of the process and the seriousness of the peer review process. And that's a continuous process where the performance of journals is always monitored to make sure that the journals indexed in Scopus are following proper academic. We've seen cases before for journals. A journal has to work outside Scopus for 2 years at least to have enough material to be examined by an independent academic committee, where they decide this journal follows proper process and actually gives out proper quality output to be included in Scopus. Okay? The list of the journals that are indexed by Scopus are available for you to check for free. So whenever you're considering a journal for publication, it's very useful to check if that journal is indexed in Scopus or not. Of course, having access to the entire platform of Scopus gives you more features to select the journals based on topics, based on data, statistics, to see the performance of the journal and so forth. But for the very least, please make sure that this journal is indexed in Scopus, that you can trust this journal. That's one thing. Another thing is to make sure that somebody is counting that research you're writing. Okay? So you've heard of ranking organizations. Ranking organizations like QS or Times Higher Education, these two, for example, rely exclusively on Scopus data to determine the ranking of the different universities. So that's a little bit of an introduction for the researcher's workflow. I'll be showing you some statistics that we have from Scopus and SciVal. These are these are databases we have that monitor research performance to show you at least where Landmark stands right now, what are the areas of improvement before we dive into the solutions, Science Direct and Mendeley together. Just to ask if we still have the display on. It's working, okay. So while we restore the visual aids now, let's see if you have any questions so far on what has been discussed, because your questions will determine which points we will give more stress and focus on during the demonstration part. So questions, please. Anyone? Any questions? Any weird cases or strange cases that you've met that we can shed some light on? I'm here to help, so please feel free to ask. Okay, so we're delaying questions for now. Okay, feel free to ask me whenever you feel ready. Let me ask you instead, how many people we have here are graduate students? Do we have any graduate students here? Okay, so how many people here are academics with a master's degree or a PhD degree? Please raise your hands, please. Okay, almost everybody here is academic staff. Okay, I need the. So we're currently waiting to restore our visual aids to be able to follow up together. Okay, meanwhile, I want to make use of the downtime we're having now. We're having some downtime to get the TVs working again. So you still can feel free to ask me if any question pops into your mind, or if there's anything that you need to shed some focus on. But I'll be describing a little bit the slides that will come forth. So Nigeria in general now is one of the top 6 African countries in terms of research metrics, in terms of the quantity and the quality of the research being produced together. That's one thing. And really fascinating part about this is that it's not only of the top 6, it has the highest growth rate in the terms of the number of publications being produced annually. So this is our very promising news. Within that larger scope of what's going on in Africa, let's check a little bit of what Landmark is currently doing. So as the esteemed Vice Chancellor said, there is very large jumps in terms of the quantity of research that we see coming out of Landmark University every year. And let me tell you, it's very impressive to see a 300% rate of increase between 2017 and 2018. And maintaining those very high growth rates are really wonderful. So usually when we see anything exceed what we call double-digit increase, so if you get a 10% or 11, 12% increase, that's usually like very, very good. These are very positive signs we see everywhere. But after that big spike, last year's growth rate, and 2019, the counting for 2019 still has not finished, but the growth rate currently is 66%. Okay, these are really like, I have to be the one doing the clapping really. And I do honestly believe that together that we can maintain those growth rates for larger volumes, because when the volume increases, when the denominator increases, it's always difficult to keep up, okay? But I strongly believe that there is still way much more. This is a very fertile land for even more prosperous research to come. And other thing is, we not only monitor the quantity of the research coming out here, we monitor what's called the field weight citation impact for that research. And it's one of the metrics we employ for having more meaningful measurement for the quality. So to introduce a little bit what the field weight citation impact is, let me ask you a question, okay? So, if I am working on energy storage. For example, if I'm working on batteries, if that's my research topic, and I wrote a paper that got 2 citations, is that good, not so good? How would you judge that number? Is it very high number or very low number? How would you judge it? On another note, if I am working on agricultural machinery and I'm getting 2 citations as well, is it the same quality as somebody who's working on energy, like energy storage, getting 2 citations? And let's expand that a little bit. If I am a medical doctor working on cancer, these are called oncologists. If I'm an oncologist doing clinical research on cancer, and I wrote a paper that got 2 citations, is that very high number or a very low number? A very extreme option on the other side is if I'm working on philosophy, like social science, okay, or humanities, and I got 2 citations. Thing is, if you're working on philosophy and you got 2 citations for your paper, that's very, very, very impressive, okay? Because most of the social science research actually do not get any citations to start with, okay, or very few citations. That's one thing. Another thing is, if you're an oncologist, medicine people tend to cite very heavily, okay? So 2 citations is way below the average for that topic. So my idea is that the number of citations on its own can be a little bit improper to compare across different subjects. So what we do is we normalize across different subjects. What we do is for every specific paper, we compare it to its peer papers. These are papers covering the similar topic published in the same year. And we establish an average for papers working on that topic in that year, and we compare the citations you get for your article to the average citations on the same topic with the same age for the paper. This can be aggregated, because if my paper gets a field weight citation impact of 1.5, that means that it's outperforming the global average of 1 by an entire 50%. So I'm outperforming the average for my field published in the same year by a complete 50%. This can be aggregated for all the papers across any entire domain. So I can aggregate this for all the papers being published by Landmark University. Okay? So this gives us a little bit of where the research being compared tete-a-tete, like head-to-head, with other research papers. Currently, some of the research being published by Landmark University is outperforming. In 2018, the global average for Landmark was exceeding by 16%. However, we see that with the growing quantity, there has been a little bit fallback to becoming around the global average. I can get the specific numbers. This is why it's very hard to memorize all the numbers, but it was a little bit less than 1. And this is something that we can work on together on how to improve the quality for that, or how to increase the visibility of that research as well. Another point is, you are actually, so we did a little bit of a comparison with your peer university. So usually people like to think of Landmark and Covenant together. So while they're a bit older and they have been producing more research, what we see now is that you currently have the same growth rate, and you are actually outperforming them on the field weight citation impact. So that's another kudos to you. But we see this as an opportunity that you can actually grow more and more. The number of publications on the top 10 percentile journals for you is a little bit waving year in and year out. So these are what times do you get published in the top 10% journals in every field. Okay, that's one metric that I'll be showing you the graphs of. And another is how often do your research paper, regardless of where it was published, make it to be of the top 10% articles cited in that field? Okay, these are some of the metrics. I'll show you how your performance is going on year in and out, starting 2017, and I'll be showing you as well that research coming up, how it's benchmarked against Covenant University once again. Yes. Yes. Sure. Worldwide. Yes. Yes.
So, don't you think that this queueness in terms of number of journals and letters actually work against African universities and make it possible for us to even break the top 10? Our journals, if we have access, can even be among the top 10% that we're talking about if they're indexed, and the citation will also be that.
That is one of the really fascinating questions I'm dying to receive for not only this workshop, for maybe the last 20 or 30 workshops I've given. Thank you so much for it. It opens a lot of there are a lot of really fresh ideas that come into to answer this question. So I'm going to break it because it's a very built up or very complex question. It has a lot of aspects. So the first aspect I'm going to comment on is, yes, you do not have to choose the prominent topics worldwide. Prominent topics worldwide are more appealing and easier to succeed with in terms of publishing or attracting funds, but we should never, especially as Africans, forget that our priorities can be very different to the rest of the world. So yes, our societies have we have a mandate to our societies to choose the topics that will help actually our societies. If the entire research community is focusing less and less on agriculture, we still need to do more research on agriculture, for example. That is always a necessity, all the way across the entire African continent and across all of the emerging markets. Okay? And the type of agricultural research being done in the US is not always applicable for me in Nigeria or in Egypt or in Morocco or in Ethiopia, any other African country. So that's a very important topic. So if the journals that are being established away from Africa are not bearing our priorities into their scopes well, then we need to develop our own journals. One of the things we are proud of in Scopus is that we tend to have more coverage coming from the south than any other database available. So that's one thing we are proud of, but we are not really satisfied. Okay? And to be honest, we need more coverage coming into the coming from Africa. We already have more coverage than anyone else for journals that are based in Africa, in Latin America, or in South Asia. Okay? But let me tell you, what we have is still not enough. And this is where we are reaching out and asking for your help. Okay? It's one of our targets to have more journals coming from Africa indexed into Scopus. Scopus has a methodology. Okay? It has very strict quality criteria that, once again, some of these criteria are purely administrative. Like, you need to have a DOI, you need to be published online, you need to publish frequently. These are all administrative tasks. And these come parallel to the quality for the research being published itself. There is a 16 set of criteria. These are very open. You know what exactly a journal will be evaluated for indexation in Scopus. We offer those, we share those, but we also offer our support to help guide you and mentor you for getting a journal indexed into Scopus. So please, if you are part of the editorial board for any journal, please reach out to us. Okay? We'll show you what's the way for getting indexed into Scopus. Sadly, I cannot guarantee that your journal will be successfully indexed into Scopus, but I cannot even guarantee it even for Elsevier journals. And let me tell you that not 100% of Elsevier's journals are indexed into Scopus. Okay? And let me tell you another surprising fact, that sometimes Elsevier's journals can get indexation in other databases faster than they can get into Scopus. This has happened before. Okay? Why? Because the publishing in Elsevier and the indexation in Scopus are completely distinct, and the final say for indexing does not come from within Elsevier, it comes from academics. Okay? So anyway, we can show you and we can train you on the process to help you get indexed. So please, yes, we do have a lot of journals. Elsevier even started a new journal that's completely focused. It's called Scientific African. Okay? So, and it's concerned with Africa, the research that is of interest to Africa. Okay? That was a first step into helping cover better research, covering research coming from Africa better. It's a gold open access journal, and it has much lower APCs than Elsevier's journals, so it's publicly available for everyone to read. And another thing is, since it's a new journal, it has not completed the 2 years requirement to apply for indexation in Scopus, but we are working very strongly on preparing that journal to meet the criteria set for indexation into Scopus. So that's one journal you can actually consider as well. I hope that more publishers develop journals for specifically for Africa, like Scientific African. But meanwhile, we are relying on having the homegrown African journals reaching out to us to help them get indexed into Scopus. So I hope this answers your question. Did I miss any part of the, because that's like really powerful question to be tackled. So please enrich our workshop with more questions of this caliber. Or that's a very high bar. Any question is valid, whatever its caliber is. And I'm hoping to get the workshop back online again. Okay, we're still trying to work out the power cut issue, and I'm still willing to go forward. I'm trying to go forward with everything that can be covered without the slides or without showing you the solution itself. So the next item on our agenda is actually to start discovering the solutions. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking a little bit on the new features on Science Direct, and once we have the power back on, I'll be showing you these and how to use them in hand. But let's introduce those first. Sadly, we're going to use it on the blind now. Anyway, so then again, how many people of you have done searching for a topic, getting results, and narrow down the results from Science Direct till you find the papers that you want to cover? So how many people of you done searched for anything on Science Direct before? Please raise your hands. I want everybody to raise their hands. Consider it as a physical exercise. I know you've already done that. Anyway, so one of the things that are being offered that Science Direct outperforms doing this on a search engine, for example, like Google, Bing, any other search engine, is that your capability, you're only searching within the domain of searching is only peer-reviewed and quality content. So that's another challenge faced against searching for topics online. I don't want Wikipedia articles to be coming up. Wikipedia is nice, but it's as useful as having a chat with a friend who reads a lot. It's not an academic reference. And the other thing is how to use properly the filtration tools to be able to narrow down and lock down on the topics that you want to cover. So that's the first feature, and you can write them down because at the end of the workshop when we get the power on, we have to do a checklist if you have seen that feature or not. Okay? So that's the very basic feature. Another thing is, so Science Direct, in terms of content, it has more than 4,000 journals on Science Direct. And there is more than 29,000 books available on Science Direct as well. So of these 4,000 journals, some of these journals are no longer active. So because Elsevier goes all the way back to like 1880, the current establishment for Elsevier. So some of these journals are no longer active. So I need to identify which of these journals are still active. Okay? And I've told you earlier, there are three main kinds